We're recording. We are recording. Hello. Welcome to episode 38 of the Brew from the Bothy podcast. My name is Fay. I am a crochet and knitwear designer, and I am coming to you with a Scottish accent from Cheshire in pretty much the middle of England. You're very welcome. Come and join me. Get a brew in hand. Come and join me as I talk about all things crochet, knitting, and like future projects I've got coming onto my hook and my needles. Come on in, let's have a little brew. I'm testing something new today. I'm testing cute girl headbands. I've never been somebody for like hair accessories, but I found these really cute ones on Etsy that are handmade with like recycled fabric, and I thought I'd give them a whirl. So can I get away with this? I think it looks kind of cute with the glasses, but I'm at that point where it's like, is it alright? Is it not alright? I just thought it would add a little bit of colour to, I wanted to wear this outfit today, and I thought this would just give me a little bit of colour. So I don't know if I can get away with it or not. I don't know if it's cute or not, or just like ridiculous, but we're going to swim with it for this podcast and see what happens. Let's dig into what has been happening. Right, let's have a little look at what is on my hook. I have made so much progress on this blanket, way more than I thought I was going to make, because the rows take quite a long time. But look. Oh, these colours are so beautiful. This is the wrong side that I'm showing you first. You can see all that filet detail in all of the stripes. I just love it. And then we flip over to the right side, and there's even more texture. And I swapped out a couple of the purple colours, and I think it was, I didn't swap out, I swapped them around from the order that the dyer had given, and I'm really pleased that I did. So I'm just coming up to this kind of brighter purple, having gone through the plummy purples. And I think today on the screen it is showing you how bluey purple these greys are, and they're not just completely charcoaly. But can you see that with the light behind me? All those little feelies, and this is it unblocked. So imagine blocked, you're really going to get this beautiful feely kind of trellis effect going through a lot of the rows of the crochet. And each row takes a long time. I have to be honest about that, but I absolutely think it's worth it. I think the overall effect is just beautiful. It could be a little close up. Look at it. So this is called the Agate blanket, and it's 100% I have designed this to make hay on advent calendar, yarn calendars that people get, because they're really popular. They've never shown any signs of slowing up. Lots of dyers do them. I also know that lots of people have got advent calendars that they have never used up over the years. Heather, yes, I'm talking to you. I know there are lots of other people that do it as well, though. And so I'm trying to make a project that people will go, oh yeah, that's viable. I could do that with my advent, and it would make a big enough blanket, and I would love it and enjoy the stripes and the sequencing. So my next set of colours, I just started this one yesterday. So this is the one that is up at the top, and it is a proper, like I would say a royal purple that's giving Henry VIII vibes. So after that, we are coming into, let me just pull up the rest of my advent. Oh, where are we? No, we've got all tangled. We start to go into more of a kind of a mauvey, and then into like indigo, into the blues, teals, and then swapping out to more of the green. So I'm really happy. I'm a quarter of the way through it already, which is way further on than I thought I was going to be. Now, this is not because of planning. I was dog sitting for my niece's dog on Saturday and managed to fall over on the road, bust up my knee, bust up my big toe nail, and so on Sunday Matthew gave me a princess day where I get to sit and do nothing, and he looked after me and brought me things, and I managed to sit for the whole day and crochet and knit and just craft outside. He put the projector up for me, so I had the BBC proms going, and then at night I had there's a really good, if you're into dance music, I'm a little raver, there's a Calvin Harris gig that was done on Hampden Park Live in Glasgow on the BBC. That was on Saturday night. I watched it on Sunday. Great gig if you love Calvin Harris. Obviously I do, because he's from my region of Scotland. And I just sat there raving and crocheting on my Agate blanket. And I had the best day, because there were no expectations on me other than to sit and craft. And it was glorious. So I got through a lot more blanket than I expected. So whilst, yes, I do have a very sore knee and a bust up foot, I got to spend a lot of time crafting, so kind of don't mind. I don't know what I can sign up to for in the next couple of weeks. I'd really love to be through the purples and kind of getting into these blues. That would feel like really good progress. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's not yet too large and making me too hot. I had a look at the long range weather forecast, and I think throughout August we're due for it to be like somewhere between 21 and 25 degrees, which feels acceptable for working on this blanket, because it's 50% silk, 50% merino, so it's not just like really warm stuff on me. But I'm hoping that I can carry it through, so as it gets a little bit colder, that's when I will have the mass of the blanket on me. That is the plan. Whether that will work or not, we shall see. So I will continue on Agate, keep on going with it. I kind of don't want to start on another crochet project until I've got this one into like a much larger project. Oh, I mean, look at it, look at that fade. I'm so happy with this design and how it's worked out. Some designs just really flow, and from the moment you start working on them, you really love them. Other designs, you start loving them, you hate them in the middle, you hate them in the end, you do all the nice bits to them, you wash it, you block it, you look after it, you finish it off, and then you fall back in love with it. Some you never fall back in love with. This one, like, in love with it. I feel really proud of this design and what it's doing, and that it's coming out exactly as I wanted it. So I'm going to keep on running with this. So apologies, because you're just going to get Agate blanket updates until I've done it, because I really don't want to pull away from this for a design and work on something else. That said, I might start working on a pair of crochet socks shortly, because I have finished a design pair for a commission and I'm really very happy with them, so I might start working on the next pair that I can share with you. So that is on my hooks, and that is going to continue to be on my hooks for a good while. Also, please note that my my lovely podcast blanket has been taken over by a cat who nested in it for one day, so I've just left all of his little blankets in there, because I would love it if this winter quite often Pom Pom comes and joins me for hours on end out here. He gets called the Bothy boy, and I'm just kind of setting it up and leaving good intention for my cat to come and join me every winter day and snuggle up in this blanket. So what was my lovely new basket, it might now be Pom Pom, so I'm leaving it there for him. Hopefully he will understand what I require of him. Probably not, because he's a cat. So on my needles, again, because of the Princess Day, I made quite a lot of progress on my Rockhopper shawl, and I got this to a point where I didn't want to work on it anymore, because I wanted to show you the construction and how interesting it is. So I stopped working on this last night, but I've now finished with 2 of the colours. I love it. Love the stripes. Love the squidgy texture of the garter stitch, and these little eyelets with every colour change, and the way the kind of metre edges work up to bring the 2 colours together and make the decreases. So let me just see if I can pull this up for you so you can see. You basically start on the very long edge, which, FYI, thank you everybody who got back to me on that, overwhelmingly your preferences seem to be to start shorter and go bigger, and there were some really good reasons for that, but I'll hold that thought now and I'll come back to that in a minute. So you start with the long edge, and then you're basically doing decreases, so you end up with these teeth pulling out almost like the back of a dragon. Obsessed with dragons. And then what you do once you've finished and gone all the way along, so you're decreasing until you get to a final one, which is like the proper size of a standard mitered square, so it is squared off. You then add on a load of stitches here, which will continue the diagonal point, and you pick up stitches. So whilst it looks a little bit unruly now, that is because I am picking up stitches in the dips. And then I think what happens, I haven't read ahead, but I think what happens is you do some short row shaping to pull up in between each of the dips, and then keep on going to get a lovely border to the shawl. So I thought I would just halt on picking up stitches so you can see what's happening. So here I've picked up in between the two, and then I need to continue for the last 3 amounts and then cast on some more stitches to extend the diagonal this way. Really interesting construction. I've enjoyed making this Rockhopper shawl so much because there's enough plain garter stitch knitting. There's enough interest every time you change the colour when you add these little eyelets in. There's enough interest at one of the ends where you do the decreasing. There's just like enough of everything to be enough mindless and enough like intriguing for your brain. I'm really interested to see how the short rows are going to work into each of these mitered right angles. I will find out maybe later on tonight. And then I'll be able to I suspect I'll have this off my needles for 2 weeks time, and I'll be able to let you know and let you see how this all comes together. But it's worked out a fairly decent sized triangular shawl, and I really like how graphic it is. I nearly changed my mind on the green and took to my stash and had a look, and I nearly swapped it out for a blue, like a mid slaty blue, and then I went back to the green because I thought actually what it's doing is, you maybe can't see it yet, but I've pulled the whole skein out and double checked it. What it's doing is bringing out the red in this darker colour rather than taking it to like a darker brown. It's making it a little bit more chestnutty. So I stuck with my original plan, didn't pull in another colour, which means that I'm also then just using all of the same dye, all of the same yarn. There's no swap out, there's no difference in intention, and I think I'll be happy with it. And if I'm not, I will pull it all out and put a different colour in, but I think it's going to work. But we'll see in 2 weeks time what happens. What I would say, it was a lot of ends to weave in because you've got obviously colour changes, 9 sections and 36 ends to weave in before I've added the border. So I sat and did that last night before I picked up stitches, but I'm really happy with it, and I suspect I'm going to get a lot of weight out of it, and I love this brown colour. It's very nice. So I will continue with that, and I will let you see. The wool is 100% Corriedale. It's by Loom Wool. It's hand dyed, but it almost has a bit of a naturally dyed look to it, which was what drew me to their stand in the first place. The pattern is Rockhopper by Maltz, and I will provide links for everything down below so you can have a look if you like. Right, let's get rid of that one. So not quite on my needles, but because my shawl is nearly finished, I like to spend a little bit of time prepping for my next project. So if I've nearly finished a crochet one, I will do the swatching for my next crochet one, so that when I've finished the other one, I can dive straight into it. I don't have that time where I'm waiting for items to do a swatch, to block, to dry, to get the information. I will have already done that in advance. So yesterday I worked on a swatch because this is a project. It's not that I don't want to do it. There are just so many other things I would prefer to be making. But when your husband asks you for a jumper that he can wear up mountains, like, I feel like that's a good thing to do. I have made Matthew 2 jumpers previously. They were both the same jumper. The first one, he wore it once, I put it in the washing machine and I ruined it. And I put most of our stuff through a wool wash, but this had alpaca in it and it just ruined. I then remade it in the exact same wool, and in between me making it and having fitted him for it, he'd been hitting the gym and he's a completely different body shape again now. So he's wider, more muscular, so it just looked like I'd sprayed it on him. It was ridiculous. So that then went to my nephew. So he's now kind of settled at his gym weight, so I can remeasure him and make him another jumper. And this time we've decided he just wants to go with a plainer jumper. He doesn't want colour work, but he really likes this. It is charcoal, but it's got a little bit of brown in there, so it's a really nice colour on him, and it's got lovely little kind of off-white, snowy white flecks of nep in there as well, which are also wool. So the yarn is Rowan Valley Tweed. I haven't used this before. I have used Rowan Felted Tweed before, which is very friable. This, in the ball and in the skein, actually feels a bit rough and feels like it will benefit from me washing all of the skeins before I start working with it. I don't tend to do that, but I was having a conversation. Somebody asked me about it at the John Arbon Mill Open weekend, because on some of their skeins they suggest that you wash the skein before you actually work from it. And I said I don't, but Sonia, who owns the mill, actually does, and she says she much prefers working from washed yarn because it's relaxed, it's ploofed up a little bit more, and she always washes her skeins before she works from them. So I have made my swatch for Matthew's jumper. This is really very wet. I am wet blocking this swatch because it's 100% wool, and I want to see how it would react if it was going through our washing machine. And it has, I think, softened up quite a lot. Matthew is a bit of a princess and likes very soft fibres, but this is a mountain jumper, so it needs to do the job. It needs to trap air, it needs to keep him cool when he needs to be cool and warm when he needs to be warm, and this needs to be a mid-layer for him that he's not that will deal with those temperature controls, rather than him wearing plastic, which is what a lot of the mountain clothing is. It's man-made fibres. So I'm hoping that I can encourage him to understand that this is much better for his system, for his body, for his skin, for everything, because he's then not wearing plastic. So it's very wet, but I do think it's softened up quite a lot. It's definitely fulled out quite a lot within the swatch compared to the out of the washed skein compared to the unwashed. I'm trying to see if there's a difference between the two. I mean, you might not be detecting it on the screen. Unwashed is on the top, washed is on the bottom. It definitely is. It's almost like a little bit thinner, but there's more halo on it, and it does feel softer already. So when this is dried, I will take the call as to whether or not I wash all the skeins of this, because I've got, I think, 550 grams I got of this. So like I said, it is Rowan Valley Tweed. It is 100% wool. It was made in Britain, and it doesn't say what the wool is, so it's probably a right old mix. But the colourway, in case you're interested, is, oh, get this really makes you want to knit with it, 9802206. Oh, that really evokes like charcoal colours, doesn't it? Especially the 206 on the end. It is a 4-ply. It's a thinner 4-ply coming in at 207 metres, 226 yards per 50 grams. So that makes it 414 metres for 100 grams. So slightly thinner than a standard 4-ply fingering. But what am I going to make with it? I think we have worked out that both of us don't suit circular yoke sweaters. We're both quite broad of shoulder, and I just think that style doesn't look good on us, doesn't work with the way that our bodies flow. So I am making him a raglan jumper. This is called Mr. Casual Sweater. This is a free of charge Sandnes Garn jumper that is available. I'll put a link below. There is a total lack of menswear patterns that are size inclusive. This one goes up to a 3XL. There was another pattern that I was looking at that was a paid for pattern that had slightly better sizing, but actually when I looked at the overall chest circumference, although it was done to a larger range of sizes, actually the largest chest circumference was smaller. So this one goes from a chest of 100 centimetres up to a chest of 131, which is... It's not giving me that in inches. Sorry, I have it here. Like, hazard of the job. So, are you ready for this? For like a very shortened pattern. This is the whole pattern. That's it. Can you imagine if I did that in a crochet design? People would have a hissy fit. You just can't get away with that little instructions in a crochet design. It's just unacceptable. But in a knitting pattern, it's totally acceptable to have a jumper that is 1 page. My garments for crochet designs are like 10, 12, 14 page patterns. I would love it if I could get away with that. I would fire out so many more garments if I could have this brevity in a pattern. It's ridiculous. So, classic raglan. I'm going to tighten up the collar a little bit because up on a hill you don't really want that open a collar. So I'm probably going to start with the smaller size and then increase the raglan just by a couple more a couple more increases just to make sure that he's got enough movement in it. But yeah, I need to get cracking with this just as soon as I got the information out of this swatch. So, who knows how long this is going to take me. There is no rush other than we're going mountain walking in September and then Matthew's going back out in October, probably up into Scotland. And I would love to have this ready for him for his October trek because it'll be pretty nippy up in Scotland at that point, and it'd be nice if he was nice and warm. Like, he's slowly getting more and more items that are hill walking, mountain walking for him. When he stays over and does wild camping or staying in a tent, like at the outer edges of the season, so maybe like early April or going into October, November, he has like his handmade socks. I made him some little mohair inner mittens that he can wear in the tent or underneath his mitten gloves as well. He's got like a sleeping hat that he has versus his hill walking hat, so if one gets wet then he can swap out for the other one for when he's in the tent. Like, he's got loads of bits, but this is the bit that is actually missing, is him having a proper hill jumper. So I need to crack on with that. Yep, I'll provide links for this. This yarn is still available. I got it in the Black Sheep Wools sale though, probably about a year ago. That's how long it's been that I've promised to get this sweater on the go for Matthew. But you can get it in other places. But I'm not sure it's like... I'm not saying it's been discontinued, but I'm not sure how easy it is to come across. But it's one of those that appears in a lot of people's stashes. You see quite often on vintage, secondhand, or like for resale. Same in D-stashes. So it is one that you can get. I don't think I paid a lot of money for the 50 gram skeins. I think I maybe paid something like £4.50 for each one because it was a bargain and I jumped on it quickly. But these two things are going to collide for a jumper. Last time round, you all told me that your preference for shawls, knitting, crochet, whatever it is, largely your preference was to start small and then grow the project, and you had some really good reasoning behind that. Some that I hadn't even thought about. One is you can use up more of your yarn, because if you're growing it out, it's easier to keep on going until you've used up as much as possible. Great point. Some people just prefer that design of the growth, because you get that really big initial hit of making a big impact and really getting somewhere in your project. So I guess that's like the dopamine hit effect of it's growing, it's growing, it's growing. I think you can also get that when you go from large to small, because when you get towards the end of it, your rows are so small that it feels really quick. It's a bit like when you're doing a jumper and you split for the sleeves and suddenly you've got a load of stitches that are on hold, and then like the body just goes so much quicker when you're doing a top-down jumper. It's not dissimilar. But actually one of the main reasons I hadn't thought about was that people quite often won't swatch for a shawl. I did not swatch for my Rockhopper shawl. And you can use the beginnings of your shawl as your swatch point to make sure that you like the fabric. And then if you don't, it's not that much to pull out and start again and maybe change needle size or hook size. So I thought that was a really good point. Let me just deal with my blind. I have this massive vintage hand that I use. It's like my extended arm. It's very helpful. So I thought they were all really good points for going to smaller shawls, and I will take all of those into account with future shawls that I design. I have got some like Doppio Colosseum, which I offer up as both options. So I've got one where you can start long and then come down to your point, or you can start at the point and grow out. So I have obviously thought about this in the past and offered both. I think a lot of people, when it's less of an issue for knitting, but when you're crocheting and you have like hundreds of chains, they can be really quite difficult to count to make sure you've got the right chain count, and that was another reason that people preferred a start small, go big. So thank you so much for that feedback. I would love to enlist your help again, please, because I have yet another blanket that I have to do, and I have accountability trapped myself, because the first person to ask me for a blanket was my friend Fraser, and to make sure that I did his blanket, because he wants a larger one, what I've actually done is worked on his kids' blankets, because they're all getting one this year, and his wife's blanket, Jenny's blanket, and now I need to start turning my attention to Fraser's blanket as well. So what I want to use are plates of my Icelandic yarn. Fraser specifically asked for this blanket because he loves some of the Icelandic yarn blankets that we've got in the house now. The ones that he's referring to are actually woven, but he didn't mind the feel of the Icelandic wool. And I have maybe 30 of these plates that I've brought back from different adventures to Iceland, because they're really affordable when you're over there, especially when I used to be able to pick them up in the supermarkets. That's less of a thing these days. So I have lots of these, and I have lots of the iron band, which I would like to pair it with. I think I would like to knit him a blanket, because I mean, you absolutely can crochet with this, but I think it probably just knits a little more easily. It's a very friable yarn. It pulls apart very easily, which is why I want to marry it up with the iron band, which doesn't, and so therefore I've got that structural integrity. What I'm actually looking to maybe do is create a little bit of a marled effect and work through all of the colours. So hold 2 strands of this together with 1 strand and 1 colour of iron band running right the way through, so I have lots of this charcoal coloured yarn. What I don't have is a knitting pattern that I found that I really want to work from. So what I'm looking for, and I would love your help on this, do you have any suggestions? I'm looking for something that can be easily striped. I don't mind if there's a little bit of intarsia in there. What I don't want is something that is mitered squares, because I need the least amount of hassle possible. I don't mind if I have to add a border onto it afterwards, but I would like to have a point of interest if there is one where somebody's worked up like a nice, almost woven looking pattern. I might be asking for too much, and this is something that I might just end up having to design myself in my head. But I thought I would ask, like, Bothy community, do you have any suggestions for me? Even if it's a crochet one, please pass me a crochet suggestion. I just would love something where I can grade out the colours that I've got. I have got a few more colours, I didn't bring them all. Something where the quantities of the yarns don't really matter, because I can just swap out another little bit. But definitely I don't really want to join. I just would like to be able to work in continuous rows. I don't mind if it's stocking stitch. It'd be great if it was garter, because it would be lovely and squidgy. But yeah, have you got any suggestions for me that I could take on board to create this blanket, or do I need to just crack on and make something up for myself? This isn't, if I do, this is not a design that I'm ever going to publish. This is just like a really mindless thing where I want to use up loads of the yarn that I've got. This has been sat in my stash for 8 years, maybe. I think the first time my dad and I went to Iceland was 2014, I think, and I bought a lot of this yarn at that point because I got it in the supermarkets, as I said, but I also went to the Alafoss factory shop and went and bought a load of stuff from there, and I had them send me a box of yarn as well. And I've used lots of it. I've used it in garments, I've used it in various bits and pieces, but it's time to move this on out of my stash into a project, and I want to use up as much of it as possible. So yes, please, if you have any recommendations, I would love to receive them from you. The only other thing that I would love to cover off with you is that moth season is upon us. I've had a couple come into the house, partially just because it's getting darker later, so the windows are still open and sometimes the lights are on, and it doesn't take a lot of light to attract a moth into your house. I saw one. I was actually sat in the toilet in our ensuite, and I saw something jumping across the carpet, and I was like, I freaking know what you are, and you are not allowed to survive. So I grabbed it, I quickly bought some moth traps, some pheromone traps, and I put them out. And I think I literally, they came in, I dealt with them, that was it, they were done. I've put pheromone traps all the way through the house, and I haven't caught any others. So I think it was a very isolated place, and I think in particular, I might add a photo in. Last year we put a living roof on our kitchen extension, and it's an absolute haven for moths, which I love. Like, I genuinely love moths. I don't like carpet beetles, clothes moths that want to come in and munch my yarn, but because we've got a living roof on the top of my bothy, and now we've got a living roof on top of the kitchen extension, the moth biodiversity that we've got going in the garden is amazing. We have so many more moths, so I don't want to change that. But at night, our bedroom window is open above the living roof, and I think that's all it is, that the moths have come in, the carpet beetles have come in from there. So I'm going to constantly monitor that and keep pheromone traps at that window, and where I saw the one carpet beetle coming across our carpet. So I've dealt with that, but just as a word of warning, this is the time when they're going to come into your house if you're kind of northern hemisphere. So just be aware. I will link down to a blog post that I pulled together last year about dealing with moths in your stash and protecting yourself, and I will also link to the pheromone traps that I bought. There are other companies available. These ones were slightly cheaper because the first ones that I looked at I just thought were horrendously expensive for what they were. So I found a cheaper supplier. I'll link to that. The other thing that I think is an issue, and you may not have thought about, is if you're hanging your washing out on the line, I tend to not like to leave mine out before dusk hits, and I don't like to leave it out on the line overnight because I think that's when a lot of moths are attracted into your clothing. You then bring it inside, you maybe put it away into your wardrobe straight away if you're like me and you can't be bothered to iron. And again, you could have introduced moths in at that point, and it's also worth checking your pets because they will piggyback in on your cat or dog in and out of the house. So there are things to be aware of, but this is the time to check your stash, make sure you don't have moths, and just keep an eye on anything that's flying in and around your house. Like I say, I'll put those links below for you, but like, this is the time, if you have a stash, if you love your yarns, if you love your handmaids, like, this is the time to be extra vigilant and looking out for what's happening within your house, because you might have clothes moths that you're just not seeing. So get your traps down, beware, keep an eye out for them. The minute something flies in our house, I'm like, is it a moth? Is it a moth? Not because I want to kill it, like I'll pop it back outside, but I just need to make sure that I'm protecting my stash and all of my beautiful handmade items. Right, I think that is everything because there is no incoming yarn. Who even am I? But yeah, that's been everything this month. So thank you as ever for coming and joining me, having a little, sorry, itchy nose, having a little brew with me. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. Hit me up in the comments as ever. Let me know what you are working on. Do you have any blanket suggestions? Are you one of those people that actually prefers a longer shawl and coming down to a smaller edge? There weren't many of you. A couple of people said they don't mind either or, but there was nobody that was like emphatically, I like to start large and come down in size. Right, let's go. Thank you very much. I am waving. Goodbye.